Matua Hori Kingi, Ngāti Mahanga, Urunumia, Tainui. Works at Te Raumatatuni as one of the project leaders, gathering information on tikanga and kaua, used by kaumātua kuia, which has been published and distributed nationwide.
Nā reira, ko Hori Kingi taku ingoa, no Tainui waka, me he uri o mahanga tēnei, te taha tōku pāpa, ko kari o i tamanga. E rua nā marae oku, ko te papora tū tētahi, ko te poihaka nāno hoki tētahi. Koena nā marae kāinga oku tūpuna. Ka te tiro anō ki te taha o tōku whae, he kāinga anō o te kotahi tanga te marae, Ngāti Urunumia, o roto i a Ngāti Maniapoto. Nō reira, tipu ake au i te kaukaro o Patatere. I reira pake ke haere, ka mutu tērā puta atu au ki te ao whānui. E whakaro hea e au, ta iaku mahi, ka te tiro pēnei mai ki te taku whaia ki au me whana tēnei tangata ki wahora. Ka raru ko te iwi. Nā, ko puta atu i Aotearoa ko haere ki a poihakana i reira au noho ai, mahi ai mo te wāpoto. Ka tahi au ka kohoki mai ki Aotearoa nei. Āhua māwiwi hoki ana au i tauawa. Kona tatake i hoki mai ki te whenua nei. Ka timata hoki au te mahi, i aku mahi i raro i ngā whare hauora. I ngā whare o te hauora hinengaro. Kona tāku. Ko rua te kau tau pia, neki atu. E mahi ana i raro i rotu i taua whare rā, te whare hauora. Bina, kua hau tēnei. I've been asked to interview a number of people who were showing signs of suicide, of whakamomori. And so I have done that. And I've given them one advice, I suppose, and it's looking at the fact that their thoughts patterns have changed, and that they tend to get anxiety attacks, if you can describe it that way, and they get this tunnel vision, as if they're in the tunnel actually. And so I give them this advice, is to sit when they're wanting to get up and run. And I give them a technique of relaxation that they can do for themselves while they're going through that, and to be able to see them through that. I did this with one person, and we had 3-4 sessions in 2 weeks. On the first session, I gave him the tool in which to identify for himself how to move away from the thinking, how to move away from the feelings that he was feeling. And he utilised it. He came back a second time, and I gave him the second part, and then checked to see if he'd done the first, gave him the second part. He came back the third time, and then we just talked. He came back the fourth time, and he explained what was actually happening to him, and the fact that he felt like he was being pulled into a tunnel. He wasn't able to change his thinking, wasn't able to change the direction where he was going, but he was definitely going to be heading towards a real, not a good place. He managed to turn himself around, and that was the last time I had seen him. Which my kōrero whakamutinga, my kōrero whakamutinga for people who are working with our people who have signs and symptoms or whakamomori is to go with a framework that you know that you could rely on what's happening to that person. And I say that because it doesn't matter what the scenario or situation is, and you can get lost in the environment, people around it, and what's actually happening. But if you have a simple framework that keeps you on task, then you're able to bring stability to the environment. And then the framework I had in my head whenever I went out, and I utilise today, is quite simple. It's a framework of know the trigger. That's why this person is starting to think this way. Know when they're escalating up into crisis. And that might be that they start to get boisterous, they start to show signs of aggression, possible, all of those things. Now, a crisis to me is when they actually physically do something about it. It might be kick a chair, might be smash a window. Windows are nice. They like the sound. People like the sound of broken glass. It just satisfies the hitting on. And so, they've gone into crisis stage. And then, so it's 1, 2, 3. The fourth one is de-escalation, is them coming off crisis, coming back to normality. And most times they change and they start apologising and realising that what they've done is not okay. There could be many signs and symptoms. I'm only describing some of them with you. But, for most people, when they see and hear that, they start seeing a person come back to normality. One of the things I want to emphasise is sometimes a person goes from crisis, de-escalates, and they go down into depression. Now, when they go into depression, that's a dangerous area. Then, they start giving themselves a hard time. They start isolating themselves. Their thinking changes. There's a whole lot of things that tend to describe what's happening for them. And that's the danger area. That's where, if anything, I'd like to emphasise for kaumātua to be aware that they don't normalise. A lot of them don't go straight back to normalising. Some of them go into depression and they can sit there for quite a while. And it's at that time where you've actually got to monitor and make sure. In that area of depression, a person will sit, isolate themselves, and they will think. Their behaviours, as I said, will change. Now, not always, you'll see an action at some stage. If a person comes back to normality, not always are they okay. You still need to monitor them out probably another month or so, 2 months. Because sometimes they make a decision to do something and that normalises them. And you'll see the action, they'll smile, they'll talk, they'll do everything as if nothing has happened. And what you don't know is what they've decided to do. And for some of them, the decision might be to plan and take their life. But they've decided, and that's why they're happy. That brings the normal, their normal behaviour, the normal thinking. Then they get down to the nitty-gritty of planning. Or the decision might be, no, I've had enough of this, I want to go back to my life. But either or, it's an area where you and I would not know what the decision is until you monitor 2 to 3 months after. One of the things that, again, affects people when they go through this process, so I suppose in a way there's a trigger that's triggered it, and then there's a change happens in the person and who they are, and behaviour is normally, observation of behaviour is normally the way people see there's something not right here. A number of things you can look at is aggression, change of eating patterns, that people tend to be hungry but they'll only pick, and that might go on for quite a while. Change in sleeping patterns, quite obvious, where a person might feel tired but only sleep for an hour and then be wide awake, and that could happen through the night. So sleeping patterns change. And that's okay for probably a short while, 6 months. But you getting past 6 months, then I believe it starts affecting the mind, and then people start what they call hallucinating. Not always is hallucination a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing, as we know as Māori. Because when families do have problems, I'm pretty sure that ancestors come back to help them, and sometimes they make themselves available to different ones in the family who see them, who hear them, who are advised by them, and so you can't get the two mixed up. Hey, you've got to make sure that that's happening there. That's one of the behaviour patterns that changes. That's quite obvious, and most people see the change. A lot of people tend to ignore it for a little while. Whanau, in my experience, they've said, oh yeah, but it's none of our business. So, you know, in a way they've normalised not being involved in other people's problems. When you see the aggression happening, you know, some people will sit back and think, oh yeah, no, we've normalised it, so that's okay. But when it's happened a few times, then people start to question, that's not like them. Hey, and then katahi ka timata ta kōrero. Mā ta kōrero ka mōhio. One of the things that's really missing today, a number of things that are missing today, Witi, is the identity of a person, knowing who they are. And it doesn't come obvious until a person is in trouble, having problems. Then they tend to look at themselves and try to find out who they are. What is it that they actually have, and how can they help themselves? And I say that because our tikanga, if we don't know who we are and identity-wise, and we don't know the tikanga that we're taught on a marae, then we don't have very good guidelines. Eh? And I think it's the tikanga back that we learn on a marae assists us to strengthen and make us resilient, as you're asking, what makes whānau resilient. So that's one of the things I believe is knowing your tikanga, knowing yourself, the ability to be able to know what is happening to you, tō hine ngaro, tō whatu manawa, tō mana, tō tapu, tō pū manawa, tō whatu manawa. Kia mōhio ai koe, e rā wahanga o te wairua ni. Mā te mōhio ka tae koe te kia atu ki te āhua pauria. I puta mai te whatu manawa. Kei te raru hoki ko te whakaro. Engari, you know, in some ways you're able to correct some of those, so that you know, a belief is a thought and an action is a thought. And so if you change the belief and you change the action, then you'll change the action. But you can't do that in isolation. You actually need whānau with you to be able to peer review. You know, you can tell a story, but people outside of you see other things that you don't see. So it's really important that your whānau sit with you and are able to walk with you. Ko tāku nei, it's really important to families to bring their families together and to keep doing that. As hard as it is, even after a member has committed suicide, still bring them together, because what tends to happen is it becomes tender, and people don't want to know about it. Nā ka noho tapu tonu te tau āhuatanga wainganui te whānau. Ne? Ko te āhuatanga kia noho tahi, kia kōrero tahi, kia kimihia I te tihi hua haere, ka tae koe te whakakorengia te rā ngāngara ko puta mai ki wainganui te. Ko nā tāku nei tēnei wā, ko nā kaupapa o te huihuinga a whānau, ko nea mea harikoa. Kau e waiho mātatangi hanga anō e karangātu ki a tātou. Me whakatū te hui, I runga anō I te pai o te kaupapa, kia noho tahi nui ho. Ko te waipiro, panaia ki wahora. Me whakatū rōpū, ā wahine, ā tāne, ā tamariki, kia kōrero ai, I aua rienga, o rātou wake raru, o rātou wake painga. Kia kite ai rātou, oh, gee, I wish I could do that. Nā, kei te kite atu rātou, he aowa no atu I tērā. Mā tērā ka tino hono anō te whānau ki te whānau. Nō reira e witi, mihi atu nei ki a koe, honore tēnei te haramai I mui te kāmara, te whakautua I o pātai. Ko tahi te pātai, inga ko rōraua te kakau o te paipa nei, ka tika me whati te kakau o te paipa I ko nei. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou.